the son of T-Relon. 5 had long since vanished behind the crescent ridges of the obsidian cliffs, casting jagged shadows across the violet sands. The winds moaned low and slow, like an ancient beast mourning something lost to time. High above the ground, built into a jutting cliffside spire, a fortress blinked with faint security lights, green, then blue, then red again, indicating that the wards were struggling to hold. In the main observation chamber of that spire, Lyran knelt in a position that belied both her power and her despair. The old dragoness breath steamed against the metal floor, her scaled wings folded tightly against her body. Silver and green scales shimmered even in the failing light, though many were dulled now with battle wear and age. Once, she had been supreme nest keeper of the Dralve Broodmother Council, revered and feared throughout the Talari expanse. Now, her claws trembled, not from age, but from fear. Fear for her daughter. Outside the thick crystalline viewports, explosions dotted the sky in brief flashes of gold and white. The Tvan, biomechanical predators from a sector beyond galactic charting, had broken through the final orbital barrier. Her fortress, a last-ditch holdout on this near-dead moon, was the only remaining sanctuary for the younglings. And it was failing. From a deep alcove at the rear of the room, a low-pitched chime rang out. "You shouldn't have contacted him," murmured Mayrick, the remaining strategist to the fortress and one of Lyran's oldest retainers. He stepped forward, his black robes whispering against the floor. "We have no guarantee he's even still alive." Lyran didn't rise. Her golden eyes narrowed, still locked on the rising column of black smoke in the far horizon. "I felt his signal," she said quietly. "Buried, perhaps, but intact. He's alive." Merrick sighed, clasping his hands behind his back. "He won't come. Not after what happened during the scouring." A pause, heavy and bitter. "He will," she said, "because I would if our roles were reversed." Merrick shook his head. "But you're Dralve. He is only human." That word lingered in the air, like a specter from a time no one dared mention aloud. Human, a species erased from the diplomatic records, hushed up in galactic tongues. Not out of hate, but out of quiet reverence, and in some corners terror. But Lyran remembered. She remembered the day she first saw the human. His name was Jace Rowan, a freelance engineer turned battlefield savior. He had been young then, maybe 28 standard cycles, with copper skin, charcoal black hair, and a gaze like smoldering storm clouds. There was nothing outwardly special about him, save for the eyes and the impossible things he did with his hands. He never carried a weapon, just a battered tool belt, a cracked neural interface over his left ear, and a quiet, stubborn determination that had baffled the Dralve and stunned the Tarsuan warlords alike. Back then, Lyran had been stationed at the Hydery front. She remembered watching from her perch above the command canopy as Jace walked into a detonated mech yard, strewn with corpses, littered with jagged, half-living machinery, and made every one of those broken units rise again. Not as slaves, not as war machines, but as protectors. He didn't use AI, not in the traditional sense. He whispered to machines like they were children. He patched them with care, made them care. They shielded the refugees as they fled and held the lines longer than any platoon had managed before. Some even chose to die for him. Lyran remembered how he'd turned down medals, how he vanished when the war ended. The last message she'd ever received from him had been no more than a sentence. "I fix what's worth saving." But now her daughter, her only daughter, was among the trapped in the lower sanctum, and Lyran could not reach her. She had fought. She had burned holes through the sky. Her wings had carried her through a dozen ambushes. But the Tvan were unlike any predator she had faced. They learned. They adapted. Her breath no longer scorched them, and their claws tore even through enchanted scale. This wasn't a war of attrition. It was a slow extinguishing. Far from the fortress, on the gray rock of an abandoned orbital scrapyard, a hissing, rusting comms relay clicked alive. A blue light blinked on. Below that comms tower, seated on the cold metal wing of a half-buried scout craft, Jace Rowan raised his head. His fingers stopped their idle movement along a twisted engine core, and the winds shifted as if they too had paused. A voice echoed from the tower, weak, laced with desperation. "This is Lyran of the Dralday. I ask help not for my kind, but for the innocent. My daughter, the younglings. The fortress will fall. The old systems call you ghost. I call you friend. Please." Jace didn't speak. He just stood, slowly brushing engine grease off his hands. He walked toward the relay, every movement careful, measured, intentional. Behind him, the scrapyard trembled. Not from machines. From the dozens, no, hundreds of reawakened constructs rising from their slumber. From ruined loaders, broken haulers, salvage scouts. From relics of wars long past, loyal only to one voice. His. He tilted his head back and breathed in the cold air of the stars. Then, with the same calm voice that once halted armadas, he replied. "Transmission received. Back at the fortress." Lyran's breath caught. For the first time in hours, her heart stirred. Merrick stared at her in disbelief. "You told her where we are?" he whispered. "I didn't have to," Lyran said, rising to her full height. "He'll find us." Merrick gestured to the sky, where black specks began blotting out the horizon. "And if he doesn't come in time?" Lyran turned toward him, her pupils narrow slits of fury and fire. "Then I die knowing I chose the right soul to call." A klaxon screamed from the lower levels. The outer gates had fallen, and Lyran's daughter, the hatchling barely old enough to conjure her first flame, was down there. Unprotected, she turned, wings flaring. "Hold the command post," she growled. "Seal this level. I'm going to her. But she's mine." As Lyran dove through the fortress, walls flashing by in a blur, another signal blipped onto the defense network. A foreign ID tag, unknown to their military systems, appeared over the horizon. It wasn't a ship. It was a fleet, one that shouldn't exist. Dozens of reconfigured war hulks, cargo units, and mechanized constructs, flying in awkward yet precise formations, all drawn to one single beacon. A man in a scavenged flight pod, no weapons aboard. Just one human, Jace Rowan, and behind him, Hope. 3 days into deep rim space, the stars began to lie. Trajectories twisted. Beacons blinked out mid-ping. Static swallowed the NAV arrays like an animal chewing bone. Cal Ebron leaned over the hollow console, scowling as another map node warped into gibberish. "Jax, reroute through manual stellar alignment." "Manual? What am I, a museum exhibit?" "The only thing more outdated than that method is polite conversation." The toaster AI groaned, its speaker crackling with sarcasm. "Do you want us to die from boredom?" "Do it," Cal said. "A beat. Done. Redirecting along Dust Skip, Route Delta 9. You're gonna owe me new shielding if we skim another cloud like the last one." Cal didn't respond. His attention was focused on the data fragment he'd isolated, an encrypted frequency that matched the signature of the machines that had attacked Varys' nest. He'd caught it faintly, a ghost echo embedded in the relays of an old satellite he passed 2 systems back. It repeated every 63 seconds. A low-band ping hidden beneath standard telemetry, like someone whispering through the vacuum. Cal stared at the signal. It had a rhythm, a pattern, almost like language, muttered a voice behind him. He turned. It was her, Mira Voss, formerly lieutenant commander in the Terran Expanse Navy, currently unemployed, technically missing, and unofficially declared dead after the failed siege of Anor 9. Cal had picked her up on Viral Station, where she'd been working low-tier security to avoid being noticed. He didn't ask why she came. She didn't ask where they were going. But she knew things. "What do you mean, language?" he asked. She leaned over, dark hair braided tightly against her scalp, eyes fixed on the signal. "That's not telemetry. That's code. Old military code. Patterned like a distress beacon. But it's meant to attract, not warn." Cal raised an eyebrow. "Attract what?" She frowned. "Test subjects." Over the next several jumps, they pieced together what they could. The Thren Syndicate, long believed disbanded, hadn't disappeared. They'd burrowed underground, deep into sectors where regulation broke down and governments didn't bother patrolling. Places like the Vord Dust Veil, a starless swath of space choked with gravitational anomalies and EM storms. The perfect place to hide operations that needed time, secrecy, and test subjects no one would miss. And dragons? They weren't just trophies. According to Myra's stolen logs, a project called Ash Genesis had surfaced in the Thran archives. Unconfirmed, redacted, but the subtitle was intact. Integrative rebirth through apex hybridization. Cal stared at it for a long time. They're trying to fuse something. With who? Mira asked. He didn't answer, but in his mind he saw the dragon egg, its smooth obsidian shell, the living flame pulsing within it. Not a weapon, not a relic, a being, one they wanted to twist. The next system brought more than theories. They came out of warp at Zarna. 4, a derelict mining colony floating above a gray, cracked moon. Scanners detected no life, no movement, but the ping grew stronger. Cal docked Holler's Echo in the remains of an orbital platform. Lights flickered. Gravity was patchy. Air held a metallic tang, blood and burnt oil. They moved slowly, Cal, Mira, and 2 more from his crew. Styx, a rail-thin ex-smuggler with a twitchy trigger finger and a love of explosives, and Waylon, a quiet synth monk whose optics burned amber under his hood. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it mattered. They passed wreckage, scorched loader bots, collapsed blast doors, signs of skirmish. But no bodies, just silence, until Mira stopped. Here, she said, pointing to a half-melted console embedded in the wall. That signal, this is its origin point. Styx crouched to crack the panel. Give me a minute, maybe 2. Waylon knelt beside a blackened smear on the floor. This was recent. Thran, Cal asked. No, Waylon replied. This was after them. Someone else came through. The console sparked, then glowed. Styx grinned. We're in. The screen showed a playback, fuzzy at first, then slowly resolving. A hangar bay, cargo crates, a squat vessel with no markings. Figures, black armor, moving in silence, handling the crates like they were sacred. And in one crate, barely visible, an egg. Not just any egg, larger than Varys's clutch. Blue veins glowing inside. Alive. Myra's breath hitched. That's not the same one. Cal leaned closer. There's more. Then the feed glitched, and something looked back. For a frame, less than a heartbeat, the camera caught eyes. Pale. Human. But wrong. Their pupils moved independently, reptilian. Then the screen went dark. Styx stepped back. That wasn't playback corruption. That was intentional. Someone knew we'd watch that. They're watching the watchers, Mira said. Waylon stood. We must go. Now. Cal turned, instinct screaming. Too late. The wall behind them exploded. They hit the floor as shock waves ripped through the corridor. Debris rained down like teeth from a steel god. Through the smoke and flame, figures emerged, tall, sleek, not armored but grown, like something between muscle and metal. Synthetic soldiers. The first one moved with inhuman grace, lunging for Mira. She rolled aside, drawing her plasma blade and slicing through its forearm, but didn't flinch. The severed limb reformed, nanites weaving into place mid-motion. Cal fired, his pulse shots hammering the thing's chest. Useless. Waylon stepped forward, hands glowing. He spoke a word in an ancient Terran dialect, and his palm flashed gold. The synthetic staggered, circuits rupturing with sparks. Holy code, sacred to his order, interrupted the enemy's neural sync. Mira didn't hesitate. She plunged her blade through the momentary gap, severing spine from core. It dropped, but more were coming. Back to the ship, Cal yelled. They sprinted through twisting corridors, the enemy at their heels. Styx lobbed a thermal charge behind them, the explosion warping the bulkheads as they dove through an access hatch. Cal sealed it. Waylon barred it. The ship was in sight. A single figure stood on the dock. Tall, cloaked in black, masked. It raised a hand and spoke. You came for the egg, it said, voice distorted by modulation. Curious. I'd hoped the dragons would stay curled in their caves and die quietly. Cal didn't stop moving. Who are you? I'm the next step, the figure replied. Then it turned and stepped backward into nothing. Vanished. The docking bay lit up. Auto-detonation initiated. Mira screamed. Run! They boarded Holler's Echo, just as the platform cracked apart, engines screaming against vacuum and shock. The ship jolted free, spinning through debris, systems buckling. Jax's voice crackled. That's it. I'm never letting you fly again. You broke my hull integrity with your hero complex. Kel didn't respond. He was staring at the console. The ping was gone, but a new signal pulsed in its place. Coordinates. Deep in the dust veil. The place dragons never went. A place called Ashgrave. Why would they send us the location? Styx asked, eyes wide. Because they want us to come, Mira muttered. Kel leaned back in the chair, heart pounding. No, he said, voice low. They want the dragon to come. They emerged into the dust veil like trespassers in a dead god's lungs. There was no starlight here. Only the flicker of dying suns diffused through endless clouds of cosmic ash. Radiation hummed through every layer of shielding. The void pressed against Holler's Echo like a warning. And yet, the signal pulsed steadily. Ashgrave, Jax muttered. We're at the edge. Whatever this place used to be, it's gone now. Mira checked the long-range scans. Debris field spans 20,000 clicks. That's not just shipwrecks. That's architecture. Cities. Stations. Whole civilizations, Whalen added. Then we're in the right place, Cal said grimly. He opened a private channel. For the first time in days, he reached out with the custom comms rig bolted to his NAV chair. Varys. Her response came slowly, like waking fire. Her voice, deep and old, trembled slightly. I hear you. We're at Ashgrave. There's something here, something Thren wanted you to find. Come if you still wish to save your young. There was a long silence. And then, I'm already on my way. 2 hours later, the ship reached orbit around a small, blackened planetoid, a grave of twisted metal and bones. What few structures remained were hollow towers of fused alloy, scorched and pitted, as if struck by a planetary-scale firestorm. And at the center of it all was a spire. Not built but grown. The scans had trouble making sense of it. No consistent density. No clear material. But the shape was unmistakable, an incubation spire. Like a nest, except this one pulsed faintly with energy. Mira looked ill. That's not Thren tech. No, Whalen said quietly. It's pre-Thren. Bioarchitectural, Jax added. Self-generating structure. We're standing over something older than recorded time. Something alive? Cal asked. The ship groaned, as if in reply. They landed cautiously on the edge of a crumbled platform. Cal, Mira, and Whalen disembarked, while Styx remained on board to guard the ship and man the weapons in case of ambush. The ash under their boots shifted like silk, muffling sound. The only noise came from deep below, the rhythmic pulse of the spire. It wasn't just alive. It was calling. Whalen stopped at the base of the spire, fingers brushing the obsidian-like surface. This was once draconic, he whispered. Cal turned sharply. What? Not made by dragons. Made of dragons. Ancient ones. Voluntarily. Sacrificed to form this. A cradle. A last hope. That doesn't make sense, Mira said. Why would dragons fuse themselves into something like this? To protect something far worse from being born, Whalen said. That's when the spire opened. No explosion. No violence. Just a sound. Low and harmonious, like a melody made of breath and death. The surface unfurled like a flower, and something stepped out. It looked human. A young girl, no older than 16. Pale skin, hair like strands of silver smoke. Eyes, slit, glowing faint gold. She wore no armor. No shoes. Just a long wrap of biocloth that shimmered with scales. Mira raised her weapon. Hold, Cal said. The girl tilted her head. You're not them, she said. You're not Thren. Her voice was layered, like two tones speaking in sync. One human, one not. Cal stepped forward. Who are you? I was born here, she said. Bred to be their vessel. But I broke the code they put inside me. I remembered what the dragons were before the culling. Before they tried to turn us into weapons. She looked at Cal. And then you came. Are you the egg they took? She shook her head. I'm the first. It was impossible, but the evidence stood before them. Her name was Esith, and she wasn't just part dragon. She was born through an ancient project the Thren Syndicate had resurrected from long before recorded history. The Ash Genesis program had been active thousands of years ago, buried after the dragons themselves sealed it away. The plan was simple in its horror. Merge dragon DNA with adaptable humanoid physiology, creating a new species, one that could wield flame, fly without wings, and control energy through will. But something went wrong. The resulting hybrid wasn't a slave. It became aware, and in its awareness, it turned on its creators. The dragons, horrified by what they had wrought, sealed the prototype away, deep in a void where no one would find her. Until Thren came, until they broke the seal, until they started again. As Esith walked with them toward the inner chamber of the spire, the truth spilled out like venom. The egg that had been stolen from Varys wasn't meant to hatch. It was meant to be absorbed, to feed Esith's next iteration, to stabilize the weaknesses Thren hadn't yet perfected. They'd taken genetic blueprints from the original dragons and combined them with post-human adaptive code, without understanding the full consequences. Esith gestured to a large, glowing capsule embedded in the wall. Inside it floated another egg. Smaller, fractured. This one failed, she whispered. Kel felt something inside him twist. They're building more like you, he said. No, Esith corrected. They're building something worse. I broke their sequence. I rejected the override. But the others won't. They'll be loyal, powerful, mindless. Waylon nodded slowly. Bioengineered gods. And the stolen egg? Mira asked. Esith looked up at the dark ceiling. They took it to the Forge Moon, orbiting a dying star. Final phase of the Genesis cycle. And if they succeed? Cal asked. Esith turned, eyes flickering. Then no star will be bright enough to see the end coming. They had no time. Cal made the call. Jax, plot a course for the Forge Moon. We're burning every tank we've got. About time, Jax muttered. I was starting to miss being shot at. Waylon looked at Esith. What will you do? She stepped to the edge of the platform, wind catching her wrap like wings. I will go with you. I am their mistake, and I will be their end. As they returned to the ship, a tremor shook the ground. Then another. The spire was crumbling. No, molting, Waylon said, eyes wide. She triggered its collapse. It was never meant to last once she awakened. They ran for the echo, Esith moving like a shadow, eyes closed as if feeling the world unravel beneath her. They barely made it aboard when the surface gave way, and the cradle sank into the ash sea, consumed by flame from within. And far above them, descending through the dust veil like a divine blade, came Varys. She was glorious, massive, scales like molten armor, fire trailing from her maw. She landed beside the ship, her body coiling protectively around it. And then she saw Esith. The two stared at each other. Then Varys whispered something in an ancient tone. Esith replied in kind. Neither Cal nor his crew could understand the exchange, but they felt its weight. Mother and daughter? Creator and weapon? Or something stranger? Then, Esith turned to Cal. We have to hurry. They're accelerating the hatch phase. If we wait too long, her voice dropped. It won't be just the dragons that die. As the echo roared toward the Forge Moon, deep in the black below, something opened its eyes. Eyes that glowed with draconic gold and human coldness. A new voice echoed through the Thren facility, soft as silk. Bring me the next egg. The Forge Moon was not on any map. It orbited a dying star deep in Thren-claimed void space, a place the stars themselves had forgotten. Its surface was cracked and black, pulsing faintly with the energy of unnatural life. Orbiting the moon were fragments of former moons, likely devoured during early phase testing, and one massive ring-shaped station stretching across the horizon like a gleaming noose. Calebrin had seen war, but never like this. As Holler's echo broke through the radiation belt, alarms screamed from every panel. Automated defense systems blinked to life, long, skeletal ships with no crew, only programming, rising like ghosts from hangars on the station. Here we go, Jax muttered, switching to combat protocols. You people never make it easy. Punch through, Cal said. Get us to the surface. This ends now. Inside the ship, Mira strapped down beside Styx, her eyes locked on the incoming swarm. 10 bogeys. No organic signatures. Can we outfly them? Styx asked. Cal didn't hesitate. No. Then we fight. We distract. Varys does the rest. As if summoned, a shadow passed above their viewport. A titanic blur followed by a streak of golden flame. Varys. She dove from the upper atmosphere like vengeance given wings, her roar vibrating even through vacuum. Her flame wasn't plasma. It was soul fire, something ancient and impossible. It consumed the lead Thren ships instantly, melting reinforced armor and AI cores alike. Now, Cal shouted. They plunged through the shattered line, shields screaming as they burst through the planetary magnetosphere and slammed into the moon's surface. Holler's echo skidded across black glass and came to rest in the shadow of a metallic fortress. Towering above them, the cradle spire, taller than the one on Ashgrave, veined with glowing red fissures and crowned by a pulsing orb that shimmered like a heartbeat. That's it, Eseth said quietly. They're awakening the hybrid, the perfected form. And the stolen egg? Mira asked. Eseth turned her head slightly. I feel her. Still alive. Barely. Cal grabbed his gear, pulse rifle, disruption charges, a patch kit for his suit. Then he looked at Eseth. You sure you want to go in? Eseth smiled, but there was no joy in it. Only steel. I was born here. I was made for this. But I wasn't made to kneel. They entered the cradle spire through a lower conduit, bypassing main gates that were guarded by auto-sentries and weaponized synths. Inside, the corridors pulsed with biomechanical light, and the walls themselves seemed to breathe. Waylon led the way, his monk training helping them navigate psychic interference that warped perception and bent space. This place is partially alive, he whispered, grown from a neural weave that absorbs thought and instinct. Cal glanced at the walls. They shimmered faintly with scales. Dragonhide. They reached a central chamber. Suspended in the air above a spiraling matrix of energy was the stolen egg, intact, but wrapped in containment fields shaped like metallic vines. Surrounding it were Thren engineers, once human, now clearly altered, implants gleaming, eyes blank, skin webbed with artificial musculature. And at the center stood him, the figure from Azarna, for encounter. Cloaked, unmasked now. His face was oddly handsome, clean, cold, angular. Human, but wrong. Too perfect. Skin like polished marble, veins glowing faintly with gold. You came, he said, smiling. Good. The ritual requires witnesses. Eseth stepped forward. You never learned, did you? The figure, he called himself Valen, tilted his head. Learn what? That dragons aren't meant to be tamed. He gestured to the egg. This one will be better than you. Obedient. Strong. With the fire of a god and the mind of a machine. No doubt. No rebellion. And soon, many more. Cal stepped beside her. You're insane. No. I'm the future, Valen said. You humans wasted your potential on emotion. Dragons wasted theirs on pride. But together, merged through science stripped of weakness, we can become something greater. And what happens to everyone else? Mira asked, voice sharp. They kneel, Valen said simply. Waylon stepped forward, raising his hand in a defensive posture. No, he said. They fight. Valen moved, faster than sight. He crossed the room and struck Waylon with a blow that sent the monk flying into a wall. Eseth let out a sound that was not a scream, but a snarl, and launched herself at Valen. The room exploded into chaos. Blades clashed, hers made of hardened bone and fire, his of liquid metal that reshaped with every strike. Their combat was more than physical. It was elemental, fire against will, creation against control. While they battled, Cal and Mira rushed the containment field. I've got a patch disruptor, Mira said, slamming a charge onto the console. Buy me 10 seconds. Go! Cal opened fire on the engineers who tried to stop them, each shot precise and deadly. Styx joined from a side hallway, flanking the guards and laughing manically as he tossed miniature explosives into the fray. Waylon, bleeding but conscious, crawled to the energy matrix and began chanting. Sacred code, pulsing from his lips in golden strands. The field flickered, then dropped. The egg fell. Cal caught it barely. It was hot, alive, beating. He looked into its surface. Inside, a tiny spark of gold fire swirled. A heartbeat, a breath, a future. And in that moment, something changed. The egg flared with light, and Varys arrived. She came through the outer wall in a cascade of molten steel and fury, her wings folding around the chamber like a cathedral of wrath. Her eyes locked on the egg, then on Eseth, and then on Valen. "You," she hissed. Valen turned, even now calm. "I honor your lineage, Scorch Mother. Your blood built the stars." "You built nothing but graves," she replied. Eseth, breathing hard, blood trickling from her mouth, stood beside her. "End this." Valen raised his hand, and from the shadows behind him, something stepped forth. 9 feet tall, black and gold, slit eyes glowing like twin stars. It looked almost human, almost dragon. Perfect. The hybrid. It was the culmination of Thren's work. All instinct, no soul. It opened its mouth, and a torrent of white flame erupted toward them. Varys intercepted it, wings shielding everyone. Cal yelled over the roar. "That thing! How do we stop it?" Eseth turned to him, eyes blazing. "You don't." Then she launched herself at the hybrid. The battle was unlike anything Cal had ever witnessed. Eseth fought not just with power, but with identity. Every strike screamed defiance. Every blow said, "I am not your creation." Varys joined her, mother and daughter, separated by centuries of fire and silence, fighting together not for domination, but for survival. And in the chaos, Cal realized something. The egg pulsed in his hands, alive, growing, responding to him. Suddenly, the egg cracked, and something inside began to emerge. Tiny wings, wet scales, gold eyes. It was hatching. "Here, now." Valen screamed. "No, it's too early." He charged Cal, blade forming from his arm. Cal didn't run. He shielded the hatchling with his own body. And as Valen struck, a burst of fire erupted from the tiny dragon's mouth. Pure, unfiltered, ancient. It struck Valen square in the chest. And for the first time, the man screamed in pain. He stumbled back, armor melting, synthetic skin burning. Eseth didn't miss the chance. She struck, claws first, then fire. Valen fell, not dead, but broken. And the hybrid? It froze, then looked at Cal, then at the hatchling. And, for the first time, it hesitated. The silence after war is always the strangest part. It wasn't immediate. The hybrid stood still for several long moments, its gaze fixed on the tiny, newly hatched dragon in Cal's arms. Something flickered behind its eyes. Recognition? Curiosity? A glitch in the perfect code Thren had embedded? Or was it something more? Then, the hybrid slowly lowered its arms. It looked at Eseth, who stood bloodied but unbowed. At Varys, coiled and heaving, her scales cracked and glowing from within. Then at the ruined shell of Valen's synthetic body, twitching, burning, still faintly alive. The hybrid tilted its head and turned. Without a word, it walked to the chamber wall, placed its clawed hand on the scorched alloy, and melted through it, vanishing into the blackness beyond. Gone, not defeated, just choosing not to finish the fight. The forge moon shuddered. Deep beneath the facility, core systems began to overload. Red lights strobed through the spire. Emergency klaxons rang out in multiple languages. Cal looked at the hatchling in his arms. Its tiny claws curled around his chest plate, eyes already glowing like miniature suns. "It saved me," he said quietly. "It chose you," Waylon replied, limping over. His robe was scorched, but he moved with calm. Jax's voice rang in over the comms. "Just a reminder that we're sitting on a ticking thermocore. Can we please evacuate now?" "Copy that," Mira said, already dragging sticks toward the exit. "Party's over." Varys limped toward Cal, her massive frame groaning, leaving a trail of molten blood. She peered down at the hatchling. A strange, ancient sound rumbled in her throat. Not a roar, but something gentler. A song, a dragon's lullaby. Cal stood his ground, heart hammering, as the massive dragoness bent her head lower and nuzzled the hatchling in his arms. "She knows you," Varys said, "even though she's only seconds into life." Cal swallowed. "What does that mean?" "She carries more than fire. She carries memory." Eseth stepped beside him, eyes soft for the first time. "Somewhere in her blood, your scent's been woven. You weren't just the first face she saw. You're the first choice she made." Then Eseth smiled. "Looks like you're a father now." Cal stared down at the baby dragon. It chirped content. "Oh hell," he whispered. Holler's echo launched from the collapsing spire as the forge moon began its death spiral. Behind them, Varys soared upward, using the last of her strength to carry the collapsing debris away from their trajectory, flames bursting from her wings to push the wreckage into the upper atmosphere. She vanished in the blast. Not dead, not quite, but swallowed by fire once more. As Cal sat on the bridge, wrapped in emergency bandages, the hatchling slept in his lap. He still didn't have a name for her. She didn't seem to mind. Mira dropped into the co-pilot's chair, silent. Eseth stood behind them, arms crossed. "She didn't have to do that," Mira said. "No," Cal replied. "She did it anyway." Waylon limped in, carrying a piece of shattered Thren circuitry. "They'll be back," he said. "Let them." Eseth answered. "We're not running." Jax's voice buzzed overhead. "So, a question. What now?" They found Varys 2 days later, barely alive, curled in the shadow of a shattered asteroid belt. Her wing was gone, half her body scorched, but she was breathing. Cal stood at her side as Eseth stabilized her vitals with a blend of old dragon magic and new human tech. When Varys opened her eyes, she saw him. Not with pity, not with judgment, but something older. Respect. "She will be greater than us all," the ancient dragon murmured, looking past him to the hatchling in a warm sphere incubator. "I just hope she lives long enough to find out," Cal said. Varys chuckled softly, smoke curling from her nostrils. "She has you. That may be enough." A month later, Cal stood on the observation deck of a rebuilt station orbiting the Dust Vale's edge. A sanctuary was taking shape, a combined effort of human engineers, rogue AI, draconic architects, and exiled Thren scientists who defected after Valin's defeat. They were building a new kind of nest, one for the future. Eseth had taken a leadership role. She refused titles, refused command, but everyone followed her anyway. Mira worked security. Styx ran drone patrols. Waylon formed an order of peacekeepers to monitor hybrid activity across the rim. As for Cal, he was raising a dragon. She grew fast, already the size of a large dog, with wings like burnished gold and scales that shimmered between amber and black. She could speak, not in words, but in images, flashes of memory, feeling fire. He named her Ember. One day, she curled beside him, eyes watching stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She showed him an image, a planet burning, machines falling, her perched high above it all, grown, glorious, wings casting light over darkness. Then she looked up at him. "You will not be alone when they come again." They never found Valin's body. No trace of his synthetic frame. No signal. No final message. But Waylon found something in a drifted comm satellite weeks later. A single file. A voice, distorted but unmistakably his. Version 1 failed. Version 2 chose. But version 3 will conquer. We are not finished. Cal looked out over the edge of space, hand resting gently on Ember's scaleback. "We'll be ready." The Forge Moon was renamed. It was no longer a place of horror, no longer a nest of manipulation and twisted ambition. It became a memorial, not to war, but to choice. They called it Ashlight. From orbit, the ring station still hovered like a crown over the broken lunar surface, but it had been transformed. Biomech corruption was burned away. Ancient structures once grown to imprison were reshaped to shelter. And at the very center, where the cradle spire once stood, rose a monolith. A black stone tower, etched with fire language no AI could decrypt. But everyone understood what it meant. No flame can be chained. No child of the stars shall be owned. It was carved by Ember. Time passed. Not quickly, never quickly in space, but with the weight of momentum that could not be undone. Word of the Thrins' defeat spread like radiation. At first, it was whispers that the dragons had returned, that something unspeakably ancient had been hatched in human arms. Then came testimonies. AI cores salvaged from Thran wrecks carried corrupted data, fragments of Ember's image. Not as a hatchling, but as she would become. Gold-plated wings, light bursting from her chest, the figure of a human man beside her, hand resting against her snout. And across a dozen sectors, that image changed everything. To some, it was salvation. To others, it was prophecy. To Thran loyalists, it was a threat so dangerous they began turning on each other just to avoid the inevitable. Kel didn't ask for fame, but fame came anyway, not because of what he destroyed, but because of what he refused to destroy. 5 years later, a delegation arrived at Ashlight. Not just human, Drakari war matriarchs, mixer psion queens, even fringe AI collectives that once saw organic life as inefficient came to observe. They came to ask Ember questions. She answered in flame and memory and dreams. Not in language, but in something older. She didn't teach war. She taught choice. That was the moment the universe changed. Because they listened. The Drakari reformed their brood-casting laws, granting their offspring the right to reject genetic destiny. The mixer psions abolished the memory vaults that enslaved ancestral consciousness into every newborn mind. And on the ruins of a forgotten Terran moon, a rogue AI collective declared, "We were wrong. The soul does not exist in code, but in refusal. And humanity refuses better than any species alive." Cal raised Ember like a daughter, but as she grew, it became clear she was something more. Not a pet, not a weapon, not a symbol. She was a beginning. Esith became her protector and teacher, sharing truths only hybrid blood could understand. Varys, scarred but alive, became her witness, ever watching, rarely speaking, but always near. Mira, Styx, and Wayland formed the core of the Ashlight Accord, an informal alliance of species bound by one principle. No child born of stardust should be born in chains. Humanity's legacy had never been about conquest. It was about defiance, and the galaxy remembered. But there were consequences. The hybrid that escaped from a forge moon was never found. It left no trail, no signal. Until it did. Entire Thran enclaves vanished, silent, hollow. Not attacked, just empty. Some said the hybrid was learning. Others feared it was recruiting. There were rumors of a second project. Echo Ash, somewhere beyond the galactic fringe, where time itself bent sideways. The rumors said something, was trying to rebuild Valen. Whether it was true didn't matter. Because the galaxy had changed, and so had humanity. A new word entered the galactic lexicon. No translation needed. Rescuer. Not a warrior. Not a soldier. Not a destroyer. A rescuer. It came to mean many things. For the Drakari, it was the one who breaks the egg so the hatchling may breathe. For the mixer, it was the light in the dreamscape that burns the tether. For the machine races, it was the code that refuses to run the script. But for everyone else, it was a human. One who carried fire not to burn, but to free. 100 years after Ashlight, a ship emerged from an ancient wormhole. It was badly damaged, adrift. Inside were recordings of a world no one remembered. Earth. Images of oceans. Trees. Skies untainted by stars. Children playing in dirt. A planet lost to the wars of the old expansion. Aliens who saw it wept, without understanding why. But humans remembered. Ember, fully grown now, great wings spanning city skylines, held the data core in her claws and released it into the starlight, broadcasting Earth's memory across the known galaxy. "Let them know where we came from," she said, "so they understand why we never give up." The message burned across space like a comet. Now, wherever two or more species meet in peace, on trade stations, in refugee colonies, along the glass paths of ring worlds, they say the words. Ashlight watches. Humanity remembers. And when someone resists tyranny, protects the weak, or stands in defiance of overwhelming odds, They're called by a name that once belonged to a broken mechanic in the void, a name that came to mean salvation. Ebron's flame. In time, the myth blurred. Cal became a symbol more than a man. Ember became legend. Eseth, a saint of will. Varys' final death, when she soared into a black hole to collapse a reborn Thren superweapon, became the subject of songs in 1,000 languages. And Ashlight, it became a pilgrimage site, a place where fire was first given to freedom. A stone remains there still, one that Ember herself etched with claw and breath. It reads, "They try to chain the stars, but a human showed us the lock could break. In the furthest corners of known space, beyond charted borders, a new ship hums to life. Sleek, unnamed, engineered from draconic alloys and human design. Inside, a new pilot breathes deep, a young hybrid, not born of war, but of hope. Her mission, not conquest, but rescue. Her last transmission, I'm the spark they couldn't extinguish, and I'm bringing the fire back to the dark." Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but one phrase remained whispered among the stars, words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. "Human, don't stop.